here today because we all want to do the same thing, which is make the care for our patients the best that we can. And I think when we're thinking about trying to improve quality, it can be quite difficult to know how to go about that because there are so many challenges that face us in our day-to-day work. I think it's important for us also to think about what happens to our burns patients. So generally, we just see them when they get into the hospital, and that's what we think of when we think about improving care. But we also have to think that our patients start off as human beings in their community. They may be part of an extended family, they have a job, or they may be at school. And then, for whatever reason, they sustain a burn injury. And we know, for example, that if there was very good prevention activities, such as government actions to improve the safety of maybe fuel or the safety of electricity, then the burns wouldn't be so severe. So once these patients have sustained their burn injury, then they've got to get to our hospital facility. And that can be quite a difficult process. So it might be that they go initially to a health post. They may or may not have any first aid. If they have first aid, that might make the injury a little less severe. But if they have no first aid or the wrong first aid, that could make the injury more severe. They may go to one or two facilities before they reach us in our healthcare facility. We give them the treatment that we can, and then they go back out into society. And again, how well they do will depend on whether they have any support, any psychological support, any physical therapy support, whether you're able to follow them up, and whether they're able to regain their place in society, whether they can go back into their school or back to work. And so we tend to focus on this area here, where the patients have come to our own facility, and this is about the treatment we offer. And it's true that these are the areas that generally we ourselves can improve for our patients. But we also have to be very aware that how well our patients recover is not simply due to what happens in the hospital here, but is also very much affected by what happens before they reach us and what happens after they have left us. We considered that burn facilities could be graded into 3 levels. So level 1 is a basic level, like a healthcare post or a very simple community health facility. Level 2 is an intermediate level facility, a district general hospital. And level 3 is one where you're in much more of a tertiary centre and you're doing much more advanced care for burns. So obviously, each of those 3 levels will be aiming to reach a different standard of care. So for each of those levels, we produced a matrix. And on this matrix, we looked at what's the knowledge required to deliver that level of care? What are the skills that the staff require? And what are the facilities and equipment that the staff will need to be able to deliver that care? And the knowledge, skills, and facilities or equipment are what determines how capable that organisation or institution is to deliver that care. So once those standards have set and we've got that matrix, we can test ourselves, we can ask our institutions to run down a list to see, do we have everything that meets that matrix? And that tells us if we're capable of delivering the care. But then we also want to say, are we meeting all the standards? Not just do we have this, but are we actually meeting the standards? Are we doing what is required to make sure our patients have the best? And that means, are we actually delivering that care? And the assumption is that if we are doing that, then our patients are going to get better outcomes. We need to look then at our own institutions, and you've all come today from your different places of work. We look to see, how are we compared to the matrix? What's the gaps? Can we meet all the requirements that we need for our level of service? And we also want to say, are we doing the best that we can? Are we meeting those standards? So we have to do a gap analysis between what we're doing and what we feel we should be doing. And then we can evaluate that. And this is where the DAT tool will come in. So in order to improve the quality of care for our patients, we have to think about 4 stages. Stage 1, set the standards. We've done that already. Stage 2 is to assess our services against those standards, to look at the matrix and to look at the standards. And then stage 3 is to make a plan for how we can improve the care in our organizations. And stage 4 is to look at whether that's made any difference or not. So this DAT tool that we're talking about, it acts here. It helps to assess our services against these standards, and it also helps us identify what needs to be done to make our services better. So the DAT tool is a 10-item tool, if you like. So we cover 10 areas that are very important for good burn care. We look at what your institution does, what are the policies and procedures, what are the activities that the burn service does, is there a team that works together for burns, what is the surgery like, are you able to deliver surgery, what level is the surgery, what's the nursing care like, how are you properly staffed, are you able to deliver the nursing care to a high standard, what general treatment is given for the burns patients, how are they rehabilitated, what kinds of support does your service give to the patients, what data do you collect, do you know how your patients get on, what your outcomes are, and what are the equipment and facilities. It's the responsibility of each service to do this themselves. So you meet together and hold a focus group discussion with the whole team, and you work your way through these questions and topics. You have discussions all together and you work out where you are in each of these areas. So when you've held your discussions, what you will have is a scorecard like this. And the nice thing about this scorecard is it covers all the areas of burn care that I discussed, and we've traffic lighted it. So once you've filled it all in, you'll be able to receive this coloured scorecard, and this will show not only where you need to improve, but also what strengths you have in your department. So green means that you've reached a high standard and met the standards in those areas, but yellow or orange means that there are some areas requiring some improvement, and red means that there's some way to go to meet the standards. So in this card, you can see sort of at a glance where you're strong and where the areas are for improvement. And because you'll have done a detailed discussion, during that discussion, some of those solutions and what needs to be done will come out of the discussion. And following that, you'll be able to have a plan for improvement. So this scorecard will show you how this particular service has scored in each of the 10 sections in the policies and procedures, in service activities, in the burns care team, and so on. And it's a score out of 100. So you can see in total where the overall score is, and you can see areas that are slightly better and areas that require quite a lot of work. You will be able to look at what you can do in each of these areas to make things better. So this part contains the suggestions for improvement in each subsection. Now, for many services, Interburns has worked with those teams quite closely to advise and to help make those plans. We've had funding for that. And if we were to do that with your services, we would also have to look for some funding to help you. But having made those suggestions, obviously there'll be a lot of work. You can't do everything. You would then pick out those areas which you definitely within your teams would be able to help arrange, and the ones that are also going to lead to the biggest improvement or change. So these blue arrows are the areas where this particular service is really going to focus its efforts. The sort of quality improvement initiatives that many of these services have taken place are, for example, having staff that have not had training receive from Interburns some essential burn care training or basic burn care courses. We've also trained local faculty, and then the local faculty will teach those courses more widely in their own institutions and outside in their own language. Once you've carried out this scorecard and you have made your plans for improvement, then a year or two later, it's really important that you evaluate whether or not that has made any difference. And you can see here in one of these services that 4 years after the first scorecard, you can see how each area has generally improved, and that some areas that were amber have moved to green, and that the score overall has improved. We see that that's got great benefits for us, because what it's showing is that improvement isn't just static, it's a journey that we all take over quite a long time. And so it's really good for staff. It lifts morale because we can all see that improvements are taking place, and it will show over time how things have improved. It also means that each time you do this, you may find some things have changed. So it will again highlight any gaps, and it will show the strengths of your service. And it will also show the impact of any training that's had, and provide evidence for your managers that improvements have taken place. So it will justify resources coming to you, and it will allow you to focus what you do with those resources on the areas that are really going to make the most